it still was very entertaining. Do you hear that?
Can you not trigger me again? Not during recording, please. Finish your writing, please. It's time for a lesson. Okay, I'm all right now. All right.
It's time for can I just like get you to get one of those like whip things and just come up to me and say that? I might just ascend to heaven.
I love his whip. Let's also just throw that out there. I love his riding crop so much. Okay.
Ow. Watch him whip. Now watch him name.
Finish your waiting, darling.
約束だよいつかまた同じ笑顔で
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Annie Chat Box. And I am so excited we've made it to episode 29 because that means we're about to dive into the 30s if we don't die in the next week.
Woohoo!
Our
podcast is middle-aged.
With the heat being as bad as it is, I might not make it to next week, so...
Keep your prayers up. Give good wishes in the comments, people.
Now, you may notice that the only one following up on my comedy genius is the Miss Cammy, and that is because she is the only one accompanying me today. We are going to be hanging out together and doing some reviews for you. But before we get to that, I want to go ahead and mention our social links, which are twitter.com/theanniechatbox and anniechatmail@gmail.com if you'd like to send us an email. And as always, you can listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and SoundCloud. And if you'd like, you can throw a shilling, I believe you said at one point, Cammy, a shilling?
A shilling.
At us at... just a singular shilling at patreon.com patreon.com/AnnieChat. You know, I need to fix the being in the Twitter one. Why did I do that?
Because...
Anyway.
Yes.
So, today's a day of twos.
It is. Double reviews coming your way.
Double reviews, double girls.
Yes.
Two girls, one anime review? I don't know.
Oh no. College flashbacks.
But yeah, this is going to be the start of us trying to double up on some some anime that we wanted to get to as soon as possible. Us being the lovely, nice people that we are, we passed a crap ton of anime, and some had to be axed, if you do recall. But from here on out, we're going to try and be a little bit more critical and stick to our guns. But when we do stick to our guns and we have too many things going on, sometimes two things need to be tackled at once.
Yep.
So, that being said, I know, Cammy, you passed the two shows that we're going to talk about today. So, would you like to introduce the first one we're going to talk about and maybe say why you passed it initially?
Of course. So, these are two shows that I ended up passing from the previous spring season. And the first one we're going to review today is Oushitsu Kyoushi Heine, or The Royal Tutor. And this one comes from Studio Bridge. And Studio Bridge has also done work on Fairy Tail, Devil Survivor 2, and Mitsudomoe, just to name a few. And the synopsis of this one goes, equally charming and stern, Heine Wittgenstein is a brilliant man who commands respect, despite his short, childlike stature. Thus, the king of Gransreich has called upon Heine to undertake a daunting task that has driven away many before him, to become the new royal tutor to 4 princes who are in line for the throne. The 4 heirs have very distinct and troublesome personalities, and I'm going to skip over this part in the mal synopsis. So they have various personalities.
I'm pretty sure we'll talk about that anyway.
What's that?
I said I think we'll probably talk about each of their personalities anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so basically, Heine's mysterious past and dark undercurrents in the present may threaten the harmony of the kingdom. Also, I think they changed the synopsis because the other one I remember had a great end line. It's a comedy of royal proportions, which I like. So we're going to add that in there. All right. So if anyone can't recall from our impressions episode where I covered this show, I love this shit show. Like, it is like full trash, at least within the first 3 episodes, I thought so. Full trash, full just like appealing to the Fujoshi, like the Bishonen crowd, anybody that likes pretty sparkly boys and just cute and funny antics, and I fell right for it. So this was one that I definitely enthusiastically passed, and I was so excited for us to watch for the show. And I am so happy that Cassie joined me on this show, and it doesn't surprise me that neither of our hosts of the male type decided to tag along. But now,
to be fair, I did convince Craig to watch one scene, and it made him laugh really hard.
I'm curious which one it was.
There's, and I can't consider this a spoiler because it's in the first episode, but there is a running joke in this show that the main tutor, the only tutor really, Heine is ridiculously short. And there is a scene where he rides on a horse standing on it because his feet can't reach the stirrups. And, okay, I know I'm jumping all out of order with this review, but the English dub for this show is fantastic because the guy who plays Heine, both in English and Japanese, just nailed it. Because in English, he blatantly says, "I'm sorry, Highness. Please excuse me. My feet would not reach the stirrups." And he just says it so point blank. And it's so great. Anyway, so we're jumping all over the place already. But yeah, needless to say, the comedy in this show is, if it's for you, I think that it does a pretty good job. And I guess that plays sort of part in the story.
It definitely does.
Yes,
yeah,
maybe.
because I think at its core, it is a comedy show.
Definitely.
And I absolutely agree with what you said of if it's for you, because, as per any show, this is, it can or cannot be for you. This show, though, is definitely like, hey, we're grasping at, like, the like Fujoshi bait and the pretty boys sort of crowd. We want, that audience, and it panders to it fairly well. Though I will say that still, despite that, like, not everything is like, hey, we're just reaching and trying to pander. Like, I think that the story itself is very simple. It doesn't try too hard to be something, but what's presented I honestly found really enjoyable. It's not a show that has like a huge overarching plot. So, I mean, they kind of shoehorn in something at the end. They kind of do.
Well, I think that also the overarching plot, and it never really shoves it in your face too often, but also that in addition to the four princes that we have, that I'm sure we'll talk about in great length at some point, there is also a fifth prince who already basically is, I guess, seen as worthy of the throne.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why this royal tutor is brought in the first place is to groom the other four princes that have their various personality problems, and get them to be somebody who can contribute to the kingdom. But also, I feel like, it's never explicitly said, but I think they want to get one of these other four princes to take over instead. There's this overarching plot of, we want you to become the king because of some reason, and that all of them are trying to become the king at some point in the future for some reason.
Yeah.
And that their brother is so much better than them for some reason. I mean, it's there, it's just not what's important. And honestly, I feel like the times when story, or a specifically character-driven emotional story is thrown in, is where this show really started to lag.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's not what it should have done. Honestly, I could have watched 6 seasons of this show of these four princes just being ridiculous and dumb in their own special ways, but also learning about themselves as they go. If that's all it ever was, I probably would have given it a higher score.
Yeah, I think it honestly could have done really well as sort of just a slice of life comedy-esque sort of thing. I do know it's based on a manga, so maybe there's like longer running plot they're trying to weave into the manga. But since they were doing the 12-episode anime, when they try to really force into you like a plot and a potential antagonist and like all this stuff, it just kind of, it lags. I think that's a really good way to put it. That's not the strongest part of the show for me. The strongest part of the show for me is just getting very like subtle everyday moments of the characters. And hey, how about we segue over that away?
Because the characters are the bread and butter of this show.
Yeah.
If you do not like any of the characters, it doesn't matter how pretty you are, you're going to rage quit. Because that's all this is about, is each individual character getting their own miniature arcs, mostly typically like an episode or so.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the brothers got one more extra episode than others. But at the same time, it's almost fine because even in those episodes, the other brothers will eventually help them out. But I feel like we should discuss these brothers. What do you think?
Yeah. So
and maybe their tutor as well. I mean, it's not like he's important.
No, he's not. He's not my favorite character in the show.
It's not like the show is named after him or anything.
Heine is great. I think that even just like what I expected from his character when I first saw the promotional art and the PV, I thought he was going to be, this is maybe a reference that not everybody will understand, but I thought he was going to be like Negima from like an old show about this like kid wizard professor. First off, I thought he was going to be a kid.
He looks just like him.
He looks just
freaking like him.
And so I was expecting this like Shota kid that would be like kind of stern or something. And I mean, I got like half of that.
He's definitely stern, and he definitely kind of looks like a Shota, but
honestly, as soon as he opened his mouth and this glorious, like, bassy voice came out, I was like, I'm sold. I'm set. I'm just so happy with this. He's very strict, but at the same time, they characterize him in a way that he can be comedic, but it's not really going outwards or betraying his personality, which I like. Like, all of his moments of comedy still seem very much to his personality. And he is shrouded in some mystery, which is, something that's necessary to just, like, later plot elements in the show. So I guess he kept me guessing, but I also really liked the traits of his character that we did see.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Especially when he went chibi.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I kind of felt the same way. The great thing about Heine is that he is very to the point and very strict, but he's also very good at reading moods. And that's something that definitely comes from his, I don't want to say lineage, it comes from where he came from, which you find out later on. And I think it's great that even though he does become a royal tutor to these young men, he really stays true to himself throughout the series. You never feel like there's something going on with him that doesn't make any sense. However, there were some moments that were a little strange, but for the most part, from the beginning to end, I felt like he was the most true character and one of the things that was really keeping me there, which was great. I liked him. He made me laugh a lot.
I liked his relationship with the princes, too. Like, each of them, because it was individual, which I appreciated a lot, because he interacted differently with each prince and, like, had different development of, like, learning how to work with them. So, again, plus on the story there, I think. But you should...
Speaking of the princes...
Yeah, how about you bring up your fave?
All right, so my favorite is the one that we meet it was one of the first ones he interacts with, and also the first to get a lesson, as it were. And that is Leonhard? How do you say it? I'm gonna call him Leo.
Yeah, Leonhard.
And
yeah.
And I was going to say he's the beautiful blonde, but all of them are beautiful blondes, so... but yeah, he's a beautiful blonde bishi, but he's very arrogant, very headstrong, and he's very athletic, which at first you would think, why is Cassie into this? That's on all of her nope checklists. But you do get to know him and know that really he's a very... What would be the best word to describe him? Misleading character from what, and I guess all of them are to an extent. Yeah. Your first impression of them is not what you're going to end up with. But especially so with this kid, because I was not expecting him to be a coward and completely just self-loathing. And I'm not going to say that that's a spoiler, because you find it out within, like, the first 15 minutes of episode 1. He maintains a journal of everything that's wrong with him and writes in it daily. And I'm like, oh, hey, they put me in this show. That's cool. But he also has, and this is another thing that I love with each of the princes that we can talk about, is he has one trait that would be great for a king, and that's
Yes.
his basically wondrous imagination. How he can really think outside the box, even without really trying to think outside the box to come to a solution. Basically, very point blank saying, well, I mean, why don't we think about it this way?
Mm-hmm.
And he's almost childlike in that regards. You know, when you're a kid and you're like, well, Mom, why don't we do this? That's basically Leo in a nutshell. And most of the show, it's him learning to not run from his problems, which is a really good life lesson to anybody, really.
Yeah. I loved with his character that, like you said, he learns to think outside the box, and there's a really nice, like, journey between him and Heine being like, oh, no, these things that he feels challenged by, he is capable of if we put a different spin on it. Like teaching math with, like, sake torte or something, like the pastry that he likes. Those little bits were sweet. I think that Heine has a very strong relationship with each of the princes, but I think that probably his relationship with Leonhard is given the most like time on screen, I think, because it's the first one.
Actually, yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, because a lot of the other ones either took place off screen or with another brother on screen.
Yes,
for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we had the whole "this lesson's going to become a little rough" thing. I'm just saying. Yes. But that being said, there are definitely more brothers. So I guess we're going out of order, but I really want to introduce my fave, and that is Kai. And he is I think he's the oldest out of the four of them.
He is.
Yeah,
he is the oldest brother and, like, the mediator, and I mean, I get it. I get it. He's second place in my heart. It's okay.
He just, he definitely was not one I expected to love. Again, this is the fun of the show with, like, the characters' personalities, is, like, when I first saw the four of them, I was like, okay, I looked at them and I'm like, I'm gonna like this one, probably this one, but it totally got flipped on its head. When you first meet Kai, he has a very intense, like, cold stare, and it sounds like he doesn't talk much, and it sounds like he is insinuating to Heine, like, I don't want you here, go away. And I was like, okay, he's the cold stoic type. But you quickly learn, I think in episode 2 or 3, that's not the case. He is basically a giant teddy bear that has some communication issues. So he has a hard time being able to talk to people, but he is very sweet, and he loves animals, and he likes to get their paws and talk about how fluffy they are, and I can't handle it.
Funny.
And then he's like, Sensei is funny. Oh my gosh,
Shadow's paw. Funny.
Oh my god, I'm just so in love with him. He then, I also think, I guess, if we're talking about the relationships, I do think he has probably the second, I don't know. I don't know if he necessarily has a very strong relationship to Heine, but he goes through a lot of development that, like, Heine helps him with. But a lot of his development also is associated with one of his other brothers, who we could potentially bring up. But before we do, I guess, isn't the quality for him, like, his best quality for King is that he's, like, kind and patient and wants to work things out with people? I think it's something like that.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, he'd be a diplomat, and I love him, just like he's a diplomat with his brothers.
I was about to say, and he is the rock that really holds all of them together. And also, when they start to disagree, he's the one who really mediates and says, guys, I mean, he doesn't say it that way. He more just goes, you're all good boys.
You're all good boys.
All good, boy.
Even when he, like, yells it, it's so cute.
Yeah, and he just wants everybody to get along. And then the next prince would be Bruno.
Yes.
Which, the first time I heard his name, I was just like, that is just such, like, out of all of them, this is such the princiest freaking name. But anyway, but yeah, Bruno's the studious one, because you gotta have one with glasses.
Of course, the Megane, you know it.
Because if the tutor ain't gonna do it for you, we gotta have at least one prince with glasses. Come on. And he is really dedicated to studying and has a very intricate relationship with studying and why he is so adamant about it, which was actually a really cute, interesting twist that I didn't see coming. I really did expect him to just be the genius, as it were. And that actually is not necessarily the case. But he is very well read. And I loved his interactions with all of his brothers as well, but his relationship with Heine was probably the one that I enjoyed on screen the most, mostly because he calls him Shisho.
It's so cute. He's such a fanboy.
Exactly. So while I think that there were some very interesting interactions between Heine and the princes, I think Bruno is the one who respected him the most.
Oh, yeah.
And also idolized him the most.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very interesting because out of all of them, at first it seemed like between him and maybe Leo, he would be the one that would despise Heine the most. So that was also very interesting. And again, I'm saying all of this, but you learn it all in like the first 2 episodes. Yeah, it's great. The show doesn't tread its feet or drag its feet.
No, yeah, they do a really good job of just being like, okay, here are characters, we're going to introduce them a little bit at a time, and then you get to just basically grow with them, watch them, experience them. Speaking of experiencing characters, I will also bring up Licht, Prince Licht, who is the youngest one, I believe. Because I always thought, like, Leo was the youngest, but Licht is the youngest, go figure. So Licht is actually kind of similar to how he is perceived at the start. It's just more that, so he's very like over the top, very energetic, very flirty, very fun loving, very silly. And I think that does play into his character. Like we do know that he is flirtatious and he likes to be social and such. But there's definitely a transitory period through his character where you realize that this is not there's times when it's put on, especially in the beginning, and he may actually be hostile, or he is just like basically putting on a face to find out more about people or keep them at a distance. And then you see when he's very genuine to people and is like earnest with his feelings, which I appreciated. I think that he probably got the least amount of screen time as far as character development out of the princes for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he did 1 episode. His episode was good. I liked his episode.
I did. I also really appreciated where they went with it, too. Like, I did not, like, if you told me where it was going to go, I would have been like, wait, why? Like, that sounds like a really dumb plot point. And then it happens, and you're like, oh, okay, I actually appreciate this. Because it's done decently. It's interesting.
And also his like, line of development, I think, was probably the most connected to their father. Yeah, a lot of his character is balanced in the relationship with, like, his father. And that being said, their father also kind of becomes a minor character that shows up a bit more as the series goes on, and that is King Victor. I love the fact that Victor! I love that there is another Victor, because we just can't get enough of, like, European Victors in anime recently.
And they're all beautiful. They're all just so pretty.
Like, can somebody tell me this guy's in, like, his 40s? Because he does not, he does not look it.
Let's just be honest here. Everybody in the show is pretty.
Yes.
Like, just they're all pretty.
But, like, if you could tell me, if someone told me, like, just showed me promo art and said, yeah, that's their other brother, I would be like, oh, yeah, of course. I wouldn't think, yeah, that's their dad.
Yeah, well, let's be honest here. There's a character in, what's it called? Masamune-kun no Revenge that I thought was a little sister, and it's his mom, so yes. #anime. You can never trust just by looking at a character what their age is. I mean, especially with Heine, for example. Mm-hmm. Who, again, is I think me and Cammie both simultaneously agreed that he was our favorite character. Mm-hmm. Which is actually cool for me, because I don't typically like the main character the most.
Same.
That's not if their name is in the title, I'm either going to hate them or I'm just not going to appreciate them as much as the side characters, because that's just how anime is, I feel.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I get way more invested in everybody around. And of course, there are exceptions to this rule, 100%. But this is one of those rare exceptions rare exceptions, blah, 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 where I liked the main character a lot. And I really was invested in him and what he was doing and how... and how he was interacting with these princes. But speaking of them being pretty,
yes,
production in this show.
Okay, so I definitely think, and maybe how could I put it? I think distinctly in character design and like artwork design, this show is honestly like very pretty. The characters are very like intricately designed. The backgrounds I think are nice for the most part. I do think that budget starts to show in the second half of the show, but for what it is, which is like a light comedy anime, I think that it's honestly very decent quality animation with a couple pretty spots, I guess is where I'd put it.
Yeah, and there are quite a few moments of stills in this show and a lot of standing around with just your mouth moving.
Yeah.
Now, that's not constant, though. There is a lot of it, but it is spaced out over 12 episodes. I think that the only times where I was like, what are you doing with your animation, were when their little sister was on screen, Adele, because her head was so huge.
Dude, I have to go back and pay attention to that.
Just look at the end of the opening. It's so frightening.
I never noticed. I'll take a look.
There's an episode where they go to the zoo, too, and it's just like... And that is in the second half. But yeah, Adele, their little sister, looks very weird. And other than that, though, I feel like the main characters are animated very nicely. There's lots of flowery, petally lights and fun.
And feathers. There's a lot of feathers, like, in the first episode.
Yes.
Like, when he opens or he sees them and they're, like, in the curtain, and it's just all of a sudden there's feathers in the room and this gust of wind. But I was like, it's so pretty.
Yep. And also the opening animation was nice as well. I like how they used tarot cards, kind of.
Yes.
Now, it's not the best anime opening I've ever seen, but it was nice enough, and I love the song. I listen to it every time.
Yeah, the opening made me really happy. And then the ending is a piece of work because...
Listen, guys, watch every single ending.
Yes.
Every single one. They're all going to be identical. But there are changes. Specifically in one episode, and I'm not going to tell you which one. Find out, and then email us at anniechatmail@gmail.com.
Do it. Tell us what you thought of the switch up.
Son of a bitch.
It was great. It was great, and I appreciate everything about that. Like, that specific ending, I squealed so hard.
I convinced a friend to watch this show based just specifically off that ED. Yes. I just sent it to her. And she was like, oh, what's this? And I was like, oh, it is this. And she was like, oh, that's an anime show? Oh, I gotta watch it. And I was like, yeah, girl, let's do this together. So,
that's wonderful.
Gonna be rewatching this in the near future. But yeah, like, I don't think the animation was ever bad, but yeah, there were very kind of weird wonky moments, and especially like you said, like especially in the second half.
Yeah, there was like there was a specific episode with like a very, like, the plot suddenly got very dark halfway through, and it, like, I wanted, because it was a very serious moment, I wanted the animation to be good, but it looked janky half the time, and I was like, aw, dang. This is like, but yeah,
it makes me sad, but at the same time, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Also, I guess I'd say in both, because while I haven't watched all of the dub, I watched a pretty long compilation video. I think that the voice acting in the sub and the dub was great. I had no complaints, really, with any of the voice acting.
I went back and forth between the two, but I will just say that Heine is the highlight of both.
Yes.
All of the voice actors and voice actresses did great. But they... either the English voice actor or the Japanese. I need to go and check. But one or the other, this is like their first acting role, or first anime acting role, whoever played Heine. And they did phenomenal.
Serious.
I'm going to go look it up really fast.
Serious. I said I watched most of it in Japanese, but I love Japanese Heine's voice so much. Like, that's half of what made his character. As soon as I heard his voice and like heard how he would deliver the comedy, it was so effective. Because, I mean, especially with a lot of, and I think we talked about this in like our Daily Lives of High School Boys reviews, but the vocal delivery of a punchline is very important in anime. And every time he had some sort of joke or just like subtle thing he did, I laughed. Like, I loved in the first episode, sometimes when he would go chibi, he'd like scuttle away, and he'd be like, scuttle, scuttle, roll, roll, roll under the couch, like verbally, and it was so cute. And it just made the scene even better.
Yep, it was the Japanese. So in Japanese, Heine is voiced by Keisuke Ueda.
I love him.
And his voice acting role, it only has Heine listed here. Let me see if I can find another one.
I love him. Let's get him in more stuff. Let's just get him in everything.
I was about to say, I'm like literally trying to search for any other role, and this is it.
Well, that's pretty effective then, at least, that like his first role, he got a major headlining role. Granted, it's like a show that didn't necessarily have like a, you know, huge following or anything and probably wasn't anticipated to, but he got a lead role. Like, good for him. Shoot.
I mean, like, the first 4 comments on here are, God, his voice is honestly glorious. He looks so young, and yet that deep voice. I'm in love.
Seriously. Let's get him in more.
That's the next one. It says, he's a really good voice actor. Very nice voice and so much emotion. He needs to get more roles. And I'm going to send you a picture of him.
Oh my God, please.
Right now,
okay.
in our live chat.
In our live
but
chat.
Look at this beautiful man.
Oh gosh,
Just
give me one second. Oh shoot. I'm in love.
Right? Okay, so anyway, we're done now.
Okay.
You see, this is why you don't let the boys leave. And also why this show achieved exactly what it was trying to do. To people like us, the show was everything it needed to be.
Yes.
Now, we didn't mention music very much. I found that the opening and ending were really catchy and fun, but other than that, nothing really stuck out to me. But, I don't know. Was there anything to you that stood out?
I just think it was serviceable, like the BGM. You know, when it needed to sound elegant and sweeping and stuff, it actually reminded me of some of the soundtracks from Ouran High School Host Club, which did the same thing. It's like you're in a classy environment. We want to kind of raise that up. But yeah, for the most part, nothing was standout, but I really did enjoy the opening and the ending a lot.
And if I remember correctly, the ED is actually sung by the voice actors of the show.
Yes, and those are fun.
Which is the staff performance here. But I also love that there's more and more voice actors that are singing the openings and endings of their own shows. That's like amazing. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
I think we can probably go into final thoughts and ratings. I can go first if you want.
Go for it.
Okay, so this show, I went into it really not expecting much. Again, I was just kind of guided by the quote unquote by my boyfriend Bishi Hatalia looks of this show. And, you know, I went into it and I was like, it is doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And I'm getting little bits of enjoyment that I honestly wasn't even expecting. You know, that being said, I don't think it's fairly adventurous in many ways, but I found the characters enjoyable. It was one of the shows that, you know, sometimes when we do impressions, I'll shelve a show until, okay, I have to like watch it later. But this is one that I kept up week to week. It was just fun and something that I could turn on after a long day, and I enjoyed. But overall, I think the highest I can give it, and again, highly just personal, I give it a like it. You know, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it.
Nice.
What about you, my love?
Okay, well, let me put it this way. I want everyone to know that when we use our rating system and we say like it or love it, that automatically includes a check it. Yes. Because I feel that this is one of those shows that it's going to go one way or it's going to go the other depending on your taste.
Yes.
But that's how it is with most anime. So anything that we may have liked or loved in the past, we're recommending you check it. You're not necessarily going to like it or love it, but a like it or a love it is a check it with an added bonus. Mm-hmm. And for me, this is a very heavy like it. I liked this a lot.
That makes me happy.
However, I'm recommending you check it.
Yeah.
Because this is definitely not something that's for everyone. You can tell from the promotional art. If you are not into pretty boy craziness, then you're probably not going to be super drawn into the show, especially because the first half of the first episode does seem very typical to what it is.
Yeah.
You're going to get exactly what you came there for. Now, as you go past that, it definitely is way more fun. I'd almost even compare it to Maid Dragon in a way, in the kind of comedy it gives you. Mm-hmm. While not as solid as Maid Dragon, in my opinion, it still was very entertaining. Do you hear that?
Can you not trigger me again? Not during recording, please. Finish your writing. Please. It's time for a lesson. Okay, I'm all right now. All right.
It's time for can I just like get you to get one of those like whip things and just come up to me and say that? I might just ascend to heaven.
I love his whip. Let's also just throw that out there. I love his riding crop so much. Okay.
Ow. Watch him whip. Now watch him name.
Finish your rating, darling.
I'm so sorry. Anyway, I give it a high like it. I recommend everybody check it out, but I personally liked it a lot, and I'm going to be rewatching it in the next couple of weeks. So that says something. It's not the best anime I've ever seen, but it's I got what it came for. And it as Cammy said, many weeks ago, I love this trash show.
Yes. So lovable.
I guess I like this trash show.
I guess we're so in agreement. I like it. We're in sync.
This happens occasionally. That being said, we're not going to have a spoiler room on our Double Up episodes because we don't want to spoil anything for anybody at all, period. And we don't want you as viewers to have to jump around. So we're just going to roll into our second review, which, again, we will go ahead and... Oh, I see. I see what you're doing.
I don't know how that happened. Technical errors.
So for those of you, and I'm going to add this in here because it'll be a good transition. The lovely Cammy made our outline today, and in parentheses next to Tsuki ga Kirei, she wrote The Royal Tutor. Possibly because she wished it was The Royal Tutor that she was just rewatching, but... I mean, it's been updated. So our second review is going to be on Tsuki ga Kirei, or As the Moon So Beautiful, or As the Moon Is So Beautiful, or however you want to pronounce it. And I'm going to go ahead and once again let you kind of take the reins here, because it is a show that you passed, and let you introduce it and explain why. You let us hang out and talk about this lovely salt mine.
Okay, so Tsuki ga Kirei, or As the Moon So Beautiful, was animated by Studio Feel, who you may recognize. They worked on Oregaru, or My Teen Romantic Comedy Snafu. I think that's how that title goes. Yosuga no Sora, and Mayo Chiki. And the synopsis goes, with the new school year comes a new crowd of classmates, and for their final year of junior high, aspiring writer Kotaro Azumi and track team member Akane Mizuno end up in the same class. Though initially complete strangers, a few chance encounters stir an innocent desire within their hearts. A yearning gaze, a fluttering heart, the hallmarks of young love slip into their lives as fate brings their paths to a cross. However, though love is patient and love is kind, Kotaro and Akane discover it is not always straightforward. Despite the comfort they find in each other's company, heartache and anxiety come hand in hand with pursuing the feelings in their hearts. With the uncertainty of how the other truly feels, as well as competing affections from those around them, the road ahead is unclear. Even so, under the shining light of a beautiful moon, Kotaro gathers his courage to ask Akane a single question, one that forever changes their relationship. Wow, spoiler to episode 3. Okay. So speaking of episode 3, so again, I am referring to our impressions because it may lead you to understand how the further rest of the review is going to go. I was so on the fence with this show. Severely on the fence. I really was not impressed by episode 1. And then basically episode 2, I was also really bored, and I was set that I was going to fail this show, or sink. Sorry, I was going to sink this show. And then episode 3 had a couple decent moments, and I had a glimmer of hope, like, okay, maybe this will be good. Maybe there's actually something here. And a lot of us as hosts really had this sort of, we all had at least like one on the fence show in the spring season. And a lot of us made the choice to pass it. So I did pass this show. It was a severely hesitant pass. And if you go back into the impression, you will hear me ranting about how slow I found this show and how I felt about the characters. I was a bit unenthused. Still, I pressed and said, maybe it will improve. So that being said, Cassie is wonderful and decided to join me on this journey. I think even when we were going back and debating cutting some shows from our roster just because we had too many to work through, she asked me, I want to find out for myself, please don't drop Tsuki ga Kirei. So
I'm so sorry.
we both made mistakes here. It's okay.
Maybe Akka would have been a better choice. I don't know.
You know, it might have. But yeah, okay, so salt mine. So that being said, we can slip into the review, and starting into story, the main reason that I got interested in this show in the first place was because it was one of the pure romance anime stories. That's how it prided itself. And it definitely does stand up to what it describes itself as, where it is a story of young love, and instead of high school, typically, it's middle school students, and that is interesting and refreshing, I thought. Overall, the story tells... Okay, so somehow by the end, the story does tell, like, a very long, complete story of these two characters and their relationships, which I like. It starts, and it has an ending. A lot of romance animes may leave off like slightly ambiguously. This one definitely had a complete story, which I appreciated. And I like what the story was trying to do, but my overall opinion is that it presents the story in a very, very blasé and cliche, forced kind of way. I don't know if you felt the same, Cassie.
To an extent. I do understand that one of the main appeals of this show, specifically with the story to a lot of people who I've talked to, is that it does seem so quote-unquote realistic and relatable to when they were in middle school. And maybe I just went to the wrong middle school, but this never happened to me or to anybody I knew. Typically, when somebody would end up in a relationship with somebody or crushing on somebody, it wouldn't be, oh, I helped you move a box and now I'm in love with you. Like...
Yeah, and I think my other thing that I definitely remember from middle school is that, like, I had crushes on people, but, like, it never, like, became something. And, you know, I was probably a late bloomer as far as, like, dating came, but it was more like, tee-hee, like, I'm gonna giggle and write little love notes about this person that I have a crush on, but it, like, wasn't something that we formally handled. So that was interesting to me. And, again, cultural differences perhaps, but yeah, it didn't, to me, feel very relatable. Maybe in, like, some small moments,
How awkward the relationship was, I can say.
Yeah.
Was a little relatable. Even just between high school relationships or relationships in general. There were some moments in the show that I genuinely was like, okay, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
For example, when they would text each other and they would have these like little moments of giddiness.
That was cute. I like that a lot.
However, their initial meet and their initial, I guess, introduction of feelings between the two seemed relatively rushed, but like you said, I liked that they got to the point by episode 3. And at least you'll have that. So if that appeals to you, congratulations. This isn't one of those shows that takes you 2 seasons for the 2 characters that you think are going to get together to actually say they like each other.
Yeah.
It's different in that regard. However, from that point onwards, and it was shaky leading up there to begin with. I'm like, wait, do they actually like each other? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, they've looked at each other twice. Like, okay. And then from there on out, it just becomes really rocky. And their relationship was very hardly believable to me.
Yeah, there were just a few choice scenes that I appreciated. Definitely, I think at first, maybe throughout the series. But yeah, I liked their line conversations, how giddy they would get, just from someone who was previously in a long-distance relationship. Like, I totally remember that, where I'm like, oh my gosh, he messaged back, feels, you know, that sort of thing. That's very sweet. Though, as that went on, also, I was just like, anyone else notice that they cannot communicate to each other in person, but, like, only online? That's a little problematic.
That does become something that they talk about later on, but at the same time, did you notice that all of their conversations started with, "Are you awake?"
You know, I didn't. That makes sense, though, because a lot of times they were talking at night. Huh.
Almost every last one of them started with, "Are you still awake?" Like, you guys have had 60 conversations. Just say hello. and there would be situations where they would just be like staring at their phones, waiting for the other person to say something, and
Yeah. The only other scene that I can there are only like two other scenes that I can distinctly remember where I got even just a glimmer of like, oh, that's cute. But again, like it wasn't very strong. I don't think the show presents its relationship or its emotions like super strongly. I liked the scene where they meet up and one of the characters says something like, oh, I don't like this part of myself. And the other character says, I don't think you should change. I like you just the way you are. Like, I thought that was sweet. It was presented well. Like, they had a pretty sunset going on in the scenery. And, like, that was nice. And I was like, okay, that's sweet. And then I really like the scene in the moonlight where... Does it count as a spoiler, Cassie?
I wouldn't say so. It's in the synopsis.
Yeah. The scene where they're under the moonlight in episode 3 and Kotaro finally says, will you go out with me? Like, those two scenes, and I think they both happened in episode 3, were kind of what pushed me to pass this show, but I don't think that the rest of the story brings up anything that really meets or strengthens like that. It just kind of flatlines, personally.
Especially considering their interactions with characters around them, the side cast, as you will, made even less sense, and in a lot of cases were just infuriating personally to me. Without going into spoilers, there is a friend. Actually, I guess technically in both their cases, there were friends who tried to, I guess not maliciously intervene in their relationships, but in a way that just did not make sense or came out of left field. A lot of people have tried to clarify this to me by saying, well, everybody makes stupid decisions when they're in high school or middle school or when they're young and in love. And I'm like, that doesn't make this writing okay.
I agree. There were a lot of things that felt shoehorned in just for one reason. Like, why did one of the characters' best friends have to take on a certain role? It could have been any character, but we had to make it the main character's best friend. Like, some of it just felt so like we are taking out a puzzle piece and like sticking it right in here. And we want it to fit perfectly, but it's just kind of not. And I actually agree that the perfect way I think you said it is sometimes during those like dramatic interruptions between the side characters, it felt malicious. Where I was like, why are you trying so hard to like push this? And it was just weird, and it was very frustrating to get through.
That being said, after the ending credits sometimes, this is another one that I would encourage you to watch past the ending credits. Some people don't notice there are little skits afterwards, and those reminded me a little bit of Suredure Children a little.
Yes.
Which is an amazing show airing this season, and if you haven't started watching it, start doing that. But those skits I actually relatively enjoyed, especially because they varied at the end of episodes. Some were a little weird, but some were actually relatively entertaining, and I think that if the entire show was that, I would have loved it.
Yeah, so my favorite part of the entire show, most likely, was the end credits to episode 12. I won't dive too far into detail of what they are. I will just say that they conclude the story in a nice little, like, neatly wrapped bow. And I liked the route that they took for the conclusion, but, like, everything leading up to it, I didn't, I trudged through. It was an effort, and it would have been a lot better if the entire show was actually 12 episodes expanded on the minute 30 of credits that we received. That would have been a much better show.
And by the way, she's not being snarky. She's not being like, my favorite part of the show was when the end credits ran. No, it's not that the show was over. It's that they showed a little mini story, kind of, in the ending credits. And that was more entertaining and more thought-provoking and more interesting to me and to Cammie. We both basically texted the exact same thing to each other at the exact same time once I finished the show. It was almost automatic. Because... the show, I will say, had potential story-wise, but most of that potential, in my opinion, was shoved into the last episode, or the last couple of episodes.
Yeah. I think that just the story overall was just, was something, it's your run-of-the-mill, it's very basic, it's what a lot of other shows have done, and the potential of the story in the credits is something that would be unique and we don't see as often. So I really, really wish that they had taken that route. You know, if maybe an OVA comes out or something, that would be really cool. Story. Yeah. Let's talk about that recap episode. There was a recap episode in the middle of a 12-episode anime. And that was a bit frustrating, as the story is the story doesn't need a recap. Like, I'll just put it there.
Especially because it's just like, this is not a story that needs a recap. It's not like there was a sudden twist in episode 6. Spoilers,
no,
there isn't. There is no twist in this show that you do not see coming, by the way.
I feel like the show just had a lot of, like, budgetary issues, but we can go more into that with production as well.
Yeah. But, like, with the exception of, like, 1 or 2 cases that just infuriated me because I didn't see them coming. For the most part, I was bored. Yeah,
I was bored too. It's boring. It's sometimes infuriating, but, like, it's, like, harmless, but it's boring. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan. I wasn't a huge fan.
And the characters don't help, by the way.
I think that's what makes a lot of it infuriating.
Yeah, the characters don't help. Like, I was more invested in the main character, Azumi, than anybody else, which I guess is one thing. I did like him as a character, and he is probably the only thing that made this show tolerable to watch. Him and his interactions with his family got to me a couple of times as well. Towards the end, specifically. There are some conversations he has with his mother and others that made me think a little, and I enjoyed that. But his relationship with Akane was annoying and boring, and she, as a character, also, I was not enthused by, and there was just nobody else for me to really feel invested in, and one character cannot carry a show.
Yeah, I agree. The only character I really ever cared about was Azumi. I think even the moments where I, like, thought it was sweet, I was just like, yay, because, like, Azumi is either a direct part of it or he'll have advantage, like, due to whatever happens in this scene. And when I got frustrated, it was because people were, well, first off, just being very stupid, but sometimes just treating Azumi unfairly. And it was frustrating. I think that the side cast was incredibly weak as well. They didn't really bring much to the page. There was, like, one side character that was kind of entertaining, and I'm talking about pink-haired kid. But then, like, you know, he's dropped off, and the side characters that we do focus on were so bland.
They were. Ugh. They were just they were there for one thing.
Exactly.
And that was it.
Exactly.
There was no other reason for them to be there. Like, they.
I agree. But I definitely agree. Akane frustrated me a lot. I didn't find anything appealing in her character. And I think part of it was because I guess I felt like both Akane and Azumi have a thing. Like, Azumi loves to write and wants to be a writer, and he loves literature. I honestly thought it was cute how he'd always, like, begin with a quote by Dazai in his inner monologues. That was cute. And Akane just likes to run. She's also got, like, some anxiety that's noted. She has a little, like, stress plush thing that I guess is supposed to be a potato, even though to me it doesn't look like a potato, that she has, which is nice to see real recognition of, like, kids with anxiety. But she, to me, was just so flat. And the thing is, with her running, she doesn't have really any arc to it. It's just, like, she likes to run. And sometimes she runs okay, and sometimes she doesn't, and that's just kind of it. Where I do think, at least with Azumi's, like, literature thing, they try to shoehorn a little bit of, like, a development or an arc there.
Right. I mean, because I do think that Akane is, to some extent, passionate about her running, but it almost... And this is just me interpreting something. This I can't say is for sure. But it almost felt like she wanted to have a goal when she did have one. Just to have a goal with Azumi. And because she's like, I'm going to get a new goal. And he said that and she said that, if I'm remembering correctly, right after he was like, oh, I got this call about A, B, and C. And then, like, afterwards, she never set a new goal for herself. If anything, she either ran bad or she ran good. And there wasn't anything that really determined which way that was going to go. And even up until the very end, they were like, hey, are you going to keep doing track in high school? And she's just like, eh.
Yeah, maybe it's just like bitterness on my point as well, but when she ran, she just looks super janky. So I was like, I don't want to see this again. It looks ugly.
Speaking of which, animation in the show was horrid. It was terrible.
Ugh.
It was disgusting. Like, CG, stop. Just stop.
The show had very, very noticeable CG crowds. Like, that's where they operated it the most, though it did come up in other points as well in some, like, key character animation, like when Kotaro is dancing. Also, okay, again, just kind of on story, like, why the fuck does this kid, like, dance in the thing? And I was like, why is this a thing? I don't really know. I'm just getting all these scenes of him dancing. Like, the story just, like...
He was part of a, like, festival community club thing. That was his after school activity. It was half, like, I think it was half to just, like, get out of the house, because I mean, I don't want to divulge too much, but there's a lot of pressure from his home life to study. So that's something that he does, is he goes to the bookstore and reads and practices writing, and then his, like, extracurricular that he does after school is that he goes and performs in the festival community thing.
This is clearly why I needed to pay more attention, but I didn't because I was bored.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you, but yeah, that was actually relatively decently explained, but yeah,
Good.
Again, like, I don't blame you for missing it. It is kind of I think that they have it there just to have him, you know, make it more slice of lifey. Like, this is what kids do.
Yeah.
If you're not in a school club, you go and do something in the community. And that's very Japan. So, fine, whatever.
You know who else was like, we'll get back to art, I'm sorry. You know who else was like kind of a semi-decent character because he only showed up like 2 times? His bookstore friend who was like his wingman.
Bookstore friend is great. I don't remember his name, but he is great. I also like Azumi's mom and dad. Akane's sister was also kind of cool, and I think that I liked Akane's sister just because she just kind of told things as they were.
Yeah. But back on art, definitely, like, the CG is very bothersome. I also just feel like sometimes even, like, when they would have characters, like, at a distance, the animation looked super gross to me a lot. But also sometimes close up, like, their facial proportions, like, their eyes were weird, like, they'd be too small or, like, misspaced, or maybe I just didn't like the facial designs.
No, the faces, like, in specific moments, like, when they would move, their faces looked really janky. When she, like, when you mentioned when she ran, it looked janky. I swear to God, there was frame bleeding in the first couple of times they were, and that should never happen. Ever.
The color palette's also kind of dull, I think.
The color palette I didn't hate. It reminded me a little bit of Wandering Sun a bit, which is a show that's really good and does different things and is a great and wonderful show and is a great and wonderful slice of life with pretty anime. Go watch that instead. Anyway, but yeah, it has a very similar color palette, though. So I didn't hate the color palette, but I do get where you're coming from. There are moments where it's way muted. It's weird.
I guess that's the way I'd put it. And when they did, you're right. Like, when they did put effort into it, it was pretty. Like, again, I think the night scene was very pretty. There was a scene in the classroom with, like, with the sunset going on. Like, that was pretty. But I guess just, like, the day-to-day color palette, was, like, dull to me a little bit.
Especially the blues on the uniform looked really freaking weird. I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know how. I actually really want to know what you thought about this, because I've heard a lot of people be very, like, one way or the other on the, like, white outline that all the characters had, the, like, sheen thing. How did you feel about that?
I was indifferent to it, to be honest. I could take it or leave it. Like, when everything else around it, like the CG and some of the characters looking lopsided in the background and everything else was going on, a white outline didn't bother me so much.
I agree.
But I'm not going to praise it either. Like,
yeah. I think some people I've heard talk about the show and they're like, that's, like, the first thing they notice as far as bad animation. That and CG. And I'm like, really, though? Because I feel like the ink outlines were just really weird. Like, in places, a lot of the lines would be, like, super thick and, like, overseeding, like, characters' facial features. Again, mainly when it was far away. When it was close up, they managed to balance the line art really well. But, like, when characters were far away, I thought it looked disgusting. That's just me. As far as music goes, I don't think there was really anything stand out. I don't think it was like horrible. I think it was just serviceable, I guess. The opening is a whole nother story, though, that I thought of when I mentioned production issues in this show. Because why the fuck? Like, in the beginning of the show, the opening it's a good song. I like the song. It's sweet, whatever. But they have just, like, photos that have, like, a cool kind of watercolor, like, filter on them that they show, like, photos and, like, some film frames and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of minimalist. Like, I don't really like it that much. And I don't understand, like, why some of these shots are in here. And then at, like, episode, maybe that's why they had a recap episode, because at episode 7, they have, like, a fully done, like, full-style anime opening to it. And I'm like, what the fuck?
And even then, the second half of the opening is footage that's going to be shown in that episode.
Yeah.
Which is weird. But yeah, like, the original opening had a lot of, like, really weird, like, flower petals and strange pictures and lots of weird stuff going on. But I kind of thought they were just trying to be artsy. Right. So I didn't think about it very much. But then, yeah, like, I thought the same thing. Like, halfway through the show, they were like, oh, by the way, we have a real anime opening now.
Yeah, and that
but only half of one.
Yeah, and it just, to me, came off very unprofessional. Like it really made me feel like this was a rush job show, you know? Sort of thing.
Which sucks, because it's super popular. It's so popular.
Yeah.
There are so many people who love this show, and me and Cammie can stand in our echo chamber and scream at the top of our lungs everything that is wrong with this show, and rightfully wrong. I mean, CG, you can't ignore the CG.
Mm-hmm.
The problems that we have with characters and story, I guess you can have your own opinions. They're wrong, but no, anyway, no, I'm kidding. But, I mean, you can have your own opinions, and that's fine. But regardless, there are tons of people who freaking adore this show, and I feel like those fans at least deserve at least some effort. This was a highly anticipated show to begin with. Lots of people were looking forward to this, and it's not like Studio Feel is a new and up-and-coming studio, which would be the only time that I would accept something like this.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, on a whole, I guess, if I'm just saying production, I feel like production was very lacking. That's really
That's a nice way of putting it.
Okay, how would you put it?
I would say it's just bad. Like, the production is, it's lackluster, it's half-assed, it's half-baked, it's half-done. It's like, okay, so, for a comparison, look at Yuri on Ice. First couple episodes, freaking beautiful. But one of the problems that I had with Yuri on Ice was its recycled frames and its animation drop. However, they tried, not in all cases succeeded, but they tried to make it not as much of a problem by trying to supplement in those reused frames in specific moments, as flashbacks, or in some other way. The point is, MAPPA and their production of Yuri on Ice tried.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Studio Feel even tried.
Mm-hmm.
Except for on a couple of episodes where there were some animators that came in and said, hey, I like sunsets, let's include one.
Yeah, again, like some, but just even on a whole, like, also, this might just be, no, that's a spoiler. Okay, so there is a big moment that is led up to in this festival, and I'm, like, thinking that I'm gonna get this, like, really pretty specific type of scene that you get in romance anime, and when it finally happens, it's, like, a really, really far off shot, and I was so pissed.
Oh, I was so salty. Now,
oh my god.
I will say, though, that episode that you're talking about specifically, I have been bad-mouthing the animation forever. There are moments in the show that are pretty.
Yeah.
One of them being wind chimes, that when they walked
those were pretty.
There's a moment where the characters, or two characters specifically, walk through what looks like a little tunnel of wind chimes, and it looks really, really pretty. And I wish the amount of dedication they applied to those wind chimes, they could apply to literally everything else. But like you said, there's this build-up to this really romantic scene that every romance anime has, and that's fine. That's what we're watching it for. But once you get to it, it just zooms out from like why?
And it's like 2 frames. It's like 2 frames of animation, and it's just like ugh. And the later episodes, I was like, hey, but like at the same time, even in later episodes, when sometimes they would like pick up on things, I was like, I've just sat here and I've trudged through this mud, and like now that you're like giving me this slight wipe on my rain boots, I don't want it anymore. Like I don't care.
Yep. Like what's the point? Now here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
How much of how you feel about this show as an overall package? How much of this show as an overall package was impacted by how hyped up this show was by so many people?
You know, I feel like that was gradual to me because when it first was airing, I kept up with I usually keep up on Mal forums when I watch a show because I like to know what people are thinking. If I'm being egotistical, I'm like, let's hear some people that say the exact same things that I feel. And so on the Mal forums, like, they didn't have a ton of like viewers, but most people who were watching it did say they enjoyed it or saw potential. There were some people that were like, it seems kind of boring, it's okay, whatever. I think for me, it's just like when a lot of critics that I really like look up to or things were not only like saying it's good or they liked it, but were just like highly praising it, that was bizarre to me. And maybe somewhere along the line that made me a little bit salty, but like initially going into it, I didn't think of this as a hyped show, and I was hoping it would be a sleeper hit, which, you know, for some maybe it was, but rating soon.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Well, I honestly don't have a whole lot to say. I actually went into the show relatively, what's the word for it? Not enthused, but what's the word for going into something positively but not super positively? What's the word for it?
Like energized, enthusiastically, reasonable. Like you went into it reasonably.
Yes. I mean, I guess I went into it with like I guess passively, but with some opinions on my back, because I watched this show literally this week, and I have been listening to Cami for a while say how much she is not a fan, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily impact what I think, but we do have very similar tastes in a lot of stuff. But for example, we talked about it before we started recording. Your Name, she's not a huge fan. Your Name, I freaking loved that movie. Even after months of hearing Cami say she felt absolutely nothing after watching it. Like, so we can differentiate from each other's opinions. For sure. So I tried to be open-minded going into this show. Okay. And when I did, don't you love when you can't remember a word and then you just try and say the sentence again and it just pops out without you thinking? Anyway, so I went in thinking, okay, you know, I get where she's coming from, but, you know, I tend to love this kind of stuff. Like, even if it's bad, I tend to love this kind of stuff. And then I remembered, so does Cami. So, that being said, I tried my best. I tried to be as open-minded as possible, but this show, it's just, for me, it just wasn't good.
Yeah.
So, I don't really have much else to say in regards to any of the points. But is there anything else that you want to talk about before we head on to the ratings? Any points that I may have forgotten in my heat stroke?
No, I pretty much agree. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of bitter and like harsh about this show from the get-go, but like, you know, I went through it and hoped it would get better, but it just kind of stayed the same.
Oh, one other thing that I forgot to mention on production. So, listen, episode 1 of this show, and I didn't tell Cami this either, so this will be kind of interesting. Ooh. Episode 1, I watched in Japanese. Mm-hmm. Episodes 2 through the end, I watched the English dub.
Wait, there's a dub? I had no clue.
Yeah, there's an English dub. It's simulcast on Funimation.
Oh, wow. How was that?
It was actually okay. Now, the reason that I watched the English dub was because the first episode was the most boring thing ever. Like, I will, and I'm sorry to say this, Camu, please don't kill me, but I would rather go and rewatch Lucky Star episode 1 than this again, because Lucky Star episode 1 I thought had no substance. It has more than episode 1 of this show does. But anyway, so and honestly, like, I have a friend of mine who adores this show, and he just thinks it's the best thing in the world, and even he admits that episode 1 of this show is just a snooze fest. So, after episode 1, I was like, well, I got laundry to do, so...
So you put it on dub.
I put it on dub so that I could, you know, not have to read subtitles, and I could still pay attention, but also be able to do multitask. And I am so happy I did, because I think watching the dub made getting through this a lot easier. And this is one of the reasons why I tell people to be open-minded about dubs. Because if anything, I think it made my experience kind of better.
That's good to know.
And the voice actors did a decent job. One thing, though, and I don't know if this was the same of Akane and the show, but I think it was for both the English and the Japanese. She just sounds so bored all the time.
I'd agree.
Sorry.
I'm actually...
Sorry.
Ugh.
Sorry.
Yikes. I actually have a question for you. Something that I enjoyed in the sub, but a lot of people... sometimes didn't like, is in the sub, Kotaro Azumi, his voice actor, you know, he has all these little, like, moments, and there's a lot of little, like, nervous sighs and, like, sounds that he makes, like, when he's embarrassed and stuff. And some people were bothered by it. I thought it was cute, because I was just like, oh, he's shy, whatever. Did the English voice actor do any, like, sort of vocal work with that?
He did, and actually, I think the voice actor for Azumi in English did a very, very good job. There was only one second time where I felt his, like, grunts and annoyance sounded awkward, but they got a really good voice actor for him, in my opinion. I also appreciated that they did keep the Dazai stuff in the English dub,
awesome.
He would be like, Dazai once said, yada, 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 yada. But yeah, so the English dub is decent. I felt like I should just shoehorn that in here, if you do choose to watch it. I don't know why we keep saying shoehorn in this episode.
At least it's not a car horn.
Okay, anyway, so that being said, we can probably scooch into ratings now. I just wanted to throw that out there. If this is something that you do want to try, I would recommend the English dub if you're into that. But both are good, by the way. I didn't hate the sub. I just hated the story, so I wanted something that was easier to digest for my brain at the time.
Okay. Do you want me to go into ratings first, I guess?
Your choice, my dear.
Okay, I did ratings first last time, so I want you to go first.
Okay.
Spins the bottle.
Okay, so, like I said, I tried to go into Tsukigakure with an open mind, like I try to do most things. There is a lot of things that I do not like in anime, but I thought that there would be a lot of things that I would love in this one, because I felt like a lot of those things would be absent. There was no fan service in this show. There wasn't anything that particularly enraged me to the point of rage quitting. The characters, while boring and at times infuriating, were harmless. And that's what this show is in a nutshell to me. It's harmless, but it harmlessly took like 6 hours of my time that I could have spent elsewhere. And where other shows I have called harmless and still recommended them to people, this is not one that I can. I don't want anybody else to waste their time. So if you feel that that me and your taste, oh brave listener, are very similar, I would just skip it. It's not worth your time. It is absolutely abysmal in visual quality. It hurt my eyes at times. It's just a nauseating visual experience, which is one of the reasons why we watch anime in the first place. If we wanted good stories, we could also go to, you know, a medium like movies or sitcoms. Half the reason we watch anime is to enjoy the art, and it is so bad. And then there is nothing to bring that bad art up. So I'm going to give it a heavy skip it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your patience. And it is not worth your frustration. However, if this is a show that sounds appealing to you, if for some reason you enjoy stories about kids in middle school, if that appeals to you, I guess check it out, but I don't recommend it. I just can't with a good conscience.
Yeah. I, as someone who just like really loves romance anime and genres, there was a lot that I was hoping to gain out of this show, and just kind of point blank, this show didn't really deliver on. A lot of times in my mind, I was like, wow, I wish I was watching like Kimi ni Todoke instead. I wish I was watching Bokura ga Ita instead. I wish I was watching Kare Kano, which, hey, seriously, everybody, please go watch Kare Kano. Like, if you want a good romance anime, I'm plugging it right now. Okay, that aside.
Please watch all 3 of those anime, actually.
Yeah, they're honestly all really good. That's the thing, is there's so much like good or like pretty good romance anime out there, and I don't think this is one. I've been on the fence of giving it a check it, because the thing is that a lot of people do check it out and love it for whatever reason. And so maybe it's perfect for you. But I guess here's my thing, is a lot of times where I give check its, it's where I think there is a merit or goodness in being able to check it out. There's something unique. There's something special. For example, I gave Kuzuno Honkai and Flip Flappers check its because there's definitely things that are worth looking into. And, you know, maybe it works with you, maybe it doesn't. But like, there's something valid there that like you should see. There's not that in this case. I can't, with a good conscience, give the same rating to the same rating to Tsuki ga Kirei as I gave those other 2 shows, which I think have a lot of identity, a lot of special things about them. So I agree. I am going to give it a skip it. Again, like, teeters on check it. Like, here's the thing. I'd say teeters on check it, like, if you love romance, but, like, we love romance, and we've seen a lot of romance. And
and honestly, to be honest, I am way more forgiving in most cases to romance shows. Because it's my thing. It's appealing to me. And I will be the first to admit, if you have a cute romance show that does something that makes my heart doki doki, I don't care if it's been done 16 times.
Yeah.
I will probably enjoy it. Whereas this one tried to do something different, I guess, but then just ended up being just like everything else, but even more boring.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, honestly, I think with Like It and Love It's, like we talked about during the Royal Tutor, there is that implication to check it in addition to how we felt. When it comes to skip it, it's our personal opinion. If there is anything about this show that we have talked about or you've heard others talk about, feel free to. I mean, we can't stop you. Yeah. I'm just saying you have better ways to spend your time if you feel that we may have similar tastes, which you may or may not have a good thought for at this point. But there's a million other good anime that you could watch. Kimi ni Todoke, Kuzuno Honkai even. Kuzuno Honkai was a better romance than this.
Yes. Yeah, there's better things out there. So, I mean, it's our recommendation. Our recommendation is to skip it. So
I mean, at least we didn't say to burn it, because it's harmless, but it's just...
Yeah.
We've yet to have a burn it, and I can't wait. I can't wait.
Oh, that's going to be an interesting day. I don't know if that's either going to come from a show we watch, or sometime when we guest appear on the Boys Diamond in the Rough show. Who knows?
Who knows? I think they actually have their own rating system. I can't remember. Though I do know, hey, we all have different thoughts and feelings, and we do have host choice at some point. So we could always burn something that one of us truly loves. How's that?
Awful. Oh.
It's like we get into what's it called? What's the next one we're doing? I can't remember. Anyway, well, John's is next. We'll just go in and I'll just be like, this was a horrible anime. Burn it. And then John cries. Anyway,
that's it for us, I think, this episode.
I'm just kidding. I love you, John. I miss you. Please come back.
I'll never leave.
But anyway, this was episode 29 of the Annie Chat Box. I think that I can't remember if next week or the week after we have another double up. It'll be a surprise. So surprise. So next week we will be doing something, and I hope that you will join us as we celebrate the great 3-0. And hopefully Craig will be on that episode, because actually Craig and John both just celebrated their 30th birthdays. So
what better timing could we have?
But that being said, as always, if you'd like, you can reach out to us through any of our social links mentioned earlier. But otherwise, we're signing out for the evening. I need water and some AC, and Cammy needs to go cuddle a dog.
Take care, everybody. Good night.
Funi.
Funi.
Oyasumi.